Welcome to another Roll to Hit Club battle report. Today we have a 24-point 2 vs 2 War Machine battle between the teams of Cryx and Menoth against Circle and Khador. Menoth has Kreoss, a Crusader, a Repenter, and a Revenger. Cryx has Deneghra, a Slayer, a Defiler, and 2 Deathrippers. Khador has Sorsha, a Juggernaught, and a Destroyer. Circle has eKaya, Laris, a Feral Warpwolf, Shifting Stones, and a Gorax. We combine the rolls to determine who goes first and tie the first time. Second time, the roll-off goes to Circle and Khador. There's our deployment, and first turn goes to Team Cold Meat. Dylan allocates a focus to each Jack and has Sorsha sit on the other 4. Ayrton starts off Circle by activating eKaya and casting Shadow Pack, then casts Force Evolution on the Warpwolf, and then runs her forward. Laris activates and runs up beside eKaya, then riles once. The Warpwolf also runs up on the other side of eKaya and riles itself twice. Going over to Khador, the Destroyer activates and runs up behind the Warpwolf. Gorax activates on Circle's side and runs to try and keep up with them and then riles twice. The Juggernaught runs behind the Destroyer and the Shifting Stones start teleporting around the Gorax. Sorsha walks up the hill and casts Fog of War, giving concealment to her army. Turn 1 for Team Flaming Bone Chickens. We allocate a focus to each Jack and have our Warcaster sit on the rest. I start off with Kreoss casting Lamentation and sits on the last focus. Then I run up everything in an original formation. And yes, I do realize that I messed up and moved Kreoss out of order. Then Brennan runs up everything in a nice wide line. Cold Meat turn 2. eKaya leeches the fury around her and pays her upkeep on Forced Evolution on the Warpwolf and the upkeep on Shadow Pack. 2 focus were given to the Destroyer and 1 to the Juggernaught. And Sorsha has 3. eKaya bleeds herself to 6 fury and pops her feet. The Destroyer walks up in front of the Warpwolf ready to shoot my Crusader. He boosts the attack and definitely hits. Boosting the damage, he does a massive 12 damage to 6. Then the Gorax activates and uses Primal on the Warpwolf. Then said Warpwolf charges the Defiler, boosting the attack he hits, and then does 14 damage. Buys another attack, hits, boosts the damage, and destroys it. And because the Warpwolf destroyed something, it gets to make a free strike against my Revenger, but rolls Snake Eyes for a miss. Then with Kaya's feet, he teleports to be behind the hill again. The Shifting Stones activate and teleport around eKaya. Laris activates and charges the Revenger, needing a 6 to hit, but Ninja Revenger dodges it. Buying another attack again, it misses, then buys another attack and manages to hit with double 6s. At -7, he still does 7 damage to 3. Then he teleports back to eKaya using her feet. The Juggernaught activates and runs to the house. Then Sorsha walks back down the hill following the Juggernaught. Sorsha uses Wind Block to get ahead of the Juggernaught and behind the house. Team Flaming Bone Chickens turn 2. Kreoss upkeeps Lamentation and sits on 4 focus. I allocate 1 focus to the Crusader and the Revenger. And Brennan gives a focus to his remaining Jacks and sits on 4. The Repenter moves up and torches the Warpwolf, but the attack was doomed to failure and missed. The Crusader runs up toward the house, and the Revenger follows with a run. Kreoss casts Defender's Ward on himself, then runs behind the Crusader, just putting Sorsha in range of Lamentation. Brennan moves his first Deathripper to the house, hoping to catch Sorsha by next turn. The other Deathripper runs toward the Juggernaught, and the Slayer follows the first Deathripper around the far side of the house. Deneghra activates and moves over, then Arknode's Crippling Grasp through a Deathripper onto the Juggernaught and hits. Cold Meat turn 3. The Shifting Stones use Soothe on the Warpwolf, and eKaya leeches the fury off of Laris. Ayrton starts off with the Warpwolf's Threshold check and fails, putting it into a frenzy. The closest unit to it was a Shifting Stone, so it attacks it and completely annihilates the little rock. Ayrton does a Threshold check for the Gorax and fails it as well. Laris was close, but the Shifting Stone was closer. The Gorax tears apart the stone with ease. Ayrton starts off by activating the last shifting stone and shifts it closer to the Warpwolf. Then Kaya activates and casts Dogpile on the Warpwolf. The Destroyer activates and shoots my Crusader again, boosting the attack. He hits. Boosting the damage as well, he does 6 damage to 4. Then Kaya runs to the crater. Laris walks up. Sorsha activates, walks back, and then wind walks all the way to a cliffside. Menoth and Cryx turn 3. Brendan gives 3 focus to the Slayer. Kreoss upkeeps Lamentation and Defender's Ward on himself. The Revenger walks up closer to the Juggernaught, then Kreoss activates, walks up, and casts Cleansing Fire through the Revenger onto the Juggernaught. It critically hits, setting it on fire, and I boost the damage to do 6 damage on 3. I move the Repenter and torch the Warpwolf and the Shifting Stone. The Shifting Stone is hit, 2 damage is done, and it's on fire. The Repenter misses the Warpwolf. Deneghra moves up beside the Slayer and casts Ghostly on it. Then the Slayer goes up and attacks the Juggernaught. The Slayer hits, boosting the damage, and it does 8 damage to 4. It attacks with the other fist, hits, does another 8 damage to 6. The attack with the tusks hit, but does no damage. He buys a fist attack, hits and does 5 damage to 3. Buys another attack, hits and does 3 damage to 1. The Juggernaught has 3 points of damage left. Its fist and movement is still working. So as a last ditch attempt to kill it, the Deathripper walks up and bites the Juggernaught. It hits, but does no damage. Then the last Deathripper walks around the house. Circle and Khador turn 4. The Shifting Stone saves itself from the fire. The Juggernaught is still on fire, but it takes no damage. The Shifting Stone soothes the Warpwolf. Then Kaya leeches Fury and upkeeps Dogpile on the Warpwolf and Shadowpack. Dylan gives 2 focus to the Destroyer. Then Sorsha activates and walks up and casts Boundless Charge on the Destroyer. Then she casts Windwalk and gets in sight range of my entire army and pops her feet. Even though it's only a sliver, Kreoss can be seen. Also, the Cryx Jacks are frozen as well. Then Sorsha turns and attacks the frozen Deathripper next to her and does 8 damage to 1. The Destroyer decides to charge his Slayer. He checks for a critical, but it doesn't work. With the charge boosted damage roll, he does 13 damage to 2. Buys another attack, no critical, and does 6 damage on 5. Buys another attack, still no critical, and does 7 damage to 6. Then the Juggernaut Falcon punches the Slayer and destroys it. The Gorax activates and casts Primal on the Warpwolf. Laris activates and runs all the way to the side of the Crusader. Kaya spirit shifts in between the Crusader and Revenger, then turns and attacks the Crusader. With Laris in combat range of the Crusader, and boosting the damage roll, she gets 4 dice and does 1 damage to 3. Buys another attack and boosts the damage again, and does 11 damage to the Crusader. Then she buys a last attack and kills the Crusader. The Warpwolf activates, and with Dogpile, he doesn't need line of sight to try and charge Kreoss. Unfortunately, the Warpwolf was 1/8 of an inch away from Kreoss. Turn 4 for Menoth and Cryx. I unfreeze Kreoss, the Revenger, and the Repenter, and I allocate 1 focus to the Repenter and set on 3. Brendan gives 3 focus to the Deathripper and sits on 4. I start off with Kreoss popping his feet. All the enemies are in range, including Sorsha. Then he walks onto the dead Crusader and starts beating on Kaya. The first attack does 10 damage. I buy another attack and kill Kaya. The Repenter activates, walks up in flame range of Sorsha, and torches her. It hits her knockdown carcass, boosting the damage. It does 11 damage and sets her on fire. The flame is also in range of the Juggernaut, but it misses with an amazing snake eye roll. Deneghra walks up and casts Ghostly on the Deathripper. The Deathripper with all the focus activates and charges Sorsha. Auto hit for knockdown, the boosted damage roll kills her with a fantastic roll of a 666. And this is Brendan's description of the Deathripper's epic feat.
The Bonejack, Ghostly, being casted on it from Deneghra. He came up from behind. He passed through a jack. The jack did not know what was coming. On the bone chick, it was knocked down, I suppose. It's hard to find out what's going on.
Could not protect its master.
Could not protect its master. As the bone chicken pounced on Sorsha, it asked it one question in its smooth, in its rotten, metallic voice. How do you like me now, bitch?
Thanks for watching. Such a great nail biter for us. If not for the failed Warpwolf charge, I wouldn't be basking in glory right now. Stay tuned for more battle reports.